especially for fresh electrical engineers who have not had much exposure to industries, and also for final year electrical engineering students of both degree and diploma courses, which will help them at the time of attending interviews and also when they join an industry, as it will make them familiar with most of the commonly used electrical equipment in today's industry. They will also be introduced to common faults and remedies for various industrial electrical equipment, and also a little bit about industrial wiring. The most common types of motors, their starters and controllers used in industries will also be fully explained. So also a little bit about utilities such as water pumps, air compressors, EOT cranes and various types of welding machines, servo stabilizers, etc. Therefore, this training program will also be useful for mechanical engineers who intend to work as maintenance engineers in industries. Various charts will also be provided as a ready reference. I am Eugene Augustine, an electrical engineer with over 50 years of vast and varied experience in various fields, starting with marine electrical systems, then moving on to aviation, specializing in aircrafts and helicopters, electrical and instrument systems. Then I moved on to Port Trust, having a fully automated iron ore handling plant with huge machinery and conveyor drives of up to 500 horsepower. And finally, I moved on to industries, mainly small-scale industries in Goa, undertaking machine breakdown and preventive maintenance, industrial wiring and technical training. During the last 25 years, while interviewing and training fresh electrical engineers for industry, I realized that most of them were not familiar with even the commonly used electrical equipment in the industries they intended to join, and they have to be taught everything from scratch. The reasons are many, including the outdated syllabus which they are still being taught, and the inadequate laboratories in their colleges where they are supposed to get some practical training, but unfortunately 80% of the equipment installed are obsolete and no more used in the industries. There are some other reasons too, about which I do not want to discuss here. Thereafter, I devised a syllabus of 8 weeks duration, which I felt could easily be integrated into the diploma or degree courses, which together with a few industrial visits would enable the students to acquire a fair knowledge of the present day industrial electrical equipment and operating systems, which would then help them at the time of joining an industry. Diploma students already have an 8 weeks industrial training program integrated into their curriculum, but unfortunately it is a total waste in the present form. All my efforts with the authorities for several years to integrate my training program into their course did not yield any result. So I started my own private training in small batches of 3 to 5 students at a time, and today several of them have reached high levels in industry and business. I am now offering you some of this technical information in this training program. Here I will start off with the first session. I will ask you some general questions based on the common electrical equipment found in almost all industries and a few common faults that occur in the electrical equipment and systems. Try to answer them and send me your answers by email, preferably within a week or 10 days. If you don't know some of the answers, you may refer to your notes and even your textbooks. But please do not take help of your other electrical engineers or any of your lecturers, and also do not refer to the internet for the answers, because I just want to know how much practical knowledge you have actually acquired from your engineering course. So let's start with question 1. This question is based on a common problem faced by industries in their lighting circuits and also in some of your homes having a 3-phase connection. You may have noticed that some small houses have a single-phase connection, whereas larger houses, bungalows and flats have a 3-phase connection. There is a rule which states that up to a certain connected load, you can get a single-phase connection, and if your load is above this, you have to take a three-phase connection. Do you know what is this limit of connected load? Well, I will answer this part of the question. Single-phase connections are allowed only for connected loads below 3 kilowatt. For loads of 3 kilowatt and above, you will have to take a three-phase connection. Now, since all your domestic equipment and also industrial lighting equipment like the lights, fans, AC, fridge, etc. all work on a 230 volts single-phase AC supply, you will also need a neutral wire in addition to the three-phase wires so that all your loads are distributed between any one phase and the neutral. Now I'll come to the actual question. This is the question. In your house, having a three-phase connection or in a lighting circuit of an industry, when some of the lights, fans, AC, etc. are on, suddenly if the main neutral wire gets disconnected, what will happen to the lights and the other equipment that were on? I repeat, when some of the lights, fans, AC, etc. are on, if the main neutral wire gets cut or disconnected, what will happen to the lights and the other equipment that were on? Now, to make the answer easier, I will give you a choice of 3 answers. Okay? You can select any one of the answers. The first choice is, when the neutral wire gets disconnected, all the lights and equipment that were on will go off. All the equipment, lights that were on will go off. The second answer is, when the neutral wire gets disconnected, all the equipment that were on will continue to work normally. All the lights and equipment that were on will continue to work normally. And the third choice of answer is, some of the lights will glow very bright and may even get burnt, whereas with the heavy loads such as AC, etc., the compressor motor may slow down, and if there is a stabilizer, it may trip. Now these are the 3 answers. You can select any one of these answers and write down that answer. But whatever is your answer, you have to tell me the reason why you think your answer is correct. Now, shall we go on to question number 2? Okay? Yeah. In your homes, you are usually supplied electricity from a distribution transformer of the electricity department, right? Similarly, small industries also are supplied power from an electricity department transformer. These houses or industries are called LT, low tension consumers. If your load is more than a certain limit, you will not be entitled to draw power from the department's transformer, but will have to install your own substation and distribution transformer along with all the associated switchgear. You are then called an HT, high tension consumer. Now, this is my question. Question number 2, part 1. Up to what connected load will you be an LT consumer? Up to what connected load will you be an LT consumer, above which you will become an HT consumer? What is the connected load? Okay, that's what I want to know. Now, part 2 of the question is, what is the rated input and output voltage of this distribution transformer of an LT consumer? What is the rated input and output voltage of the distribution transformer? It will be written on the nameplate of the transformer. I want to know the exact voltage, okay? Input and output voltage. Part 3. What is the maximum rated output current of a 315 kVA, 315 kVA distribution transformer, and how did you calculate it? I also want to know how you have calculated it, okay? 315 kVA distribution transformer, what is the rated output current? Okay. Now part 4 of the question is, it's about earthing. You know that even in your house wiring you need an earthing. If yours is a 3-phase connection, you will need 2 numbers of earthings. There are different types of earthings such as pipe earthing, plate earthing, chemical earthing, etc., which I am not going to discuss here. In industries, your earth pits will also need an earth chamber and chamber plate to protect the earthing, and together it is called an earth station. As I told you earlier, an HT consumer has to provide his own substation. This substation consists of 2 parts or sections. The first section belongs to the electricity department. It has a 2-pole structure with insulators for the incoming cables, a set of lightning arresters, HT fuses, and a breaker or an isolator, also known as GOAB switch, gang operated air brake switch, and the metering panel housing the CTPT, the tri-vector meter, etc., for metering your power consumption. It not only records your power consumption but also other parameters such as power factor, etc. Nowadays, even smart tri-vector meters are installed, whereby the electricity department need not come to your site for taking the readings but can measure it remotely from their substation and issue you the bills. The second section of the substation belongs to the consumer. It also consists of a 2-pole structure with necessary insulators, lightning arresters, HT fuses, GOAB switch, and then the distribution transformer, usually mounted on a PCC plinth. Now this is my question. How many earthings or earth stations have to be provided for 11 kV substation of an HT consumer for the consumer's installation as well as the electricity department's installation? Some earthings are required for the consumer's installation and some are required for the electricity department's installation. Okay? How many earth stations are required and how they are connected? Each earthing, where they are connected. I want to know in detail. And part 5 of the question is, this is about power factor. You know what is power factor, right? Every inductive load has a power factor which causes a power loss to the electricity department. So there is a rule that a certain minimum power factor is to be maintained by the consumer. If not, you will be charged a penalty. Similarly, if a power factor is maintained above a certain limit, you will get a rebate on the bill. Right now, this rule is applicable only to HT consumers. Now, this is my question. What is the minimum power factor that is to be maintained by an HT consumer to avoid paying penalty for low power factor? And above what power factor will the HT consumer be entitled for a rebate from the electricity department? This is my question. We'll move to question number 3 now. This question is about motors. As you know, almost all the machines in industries are driven by electric motors. So this is a very important subject. You must have studied various types of motors, AC motors, single phase and 3-phase motors, and then various types of DC motors too. Now my question is, what are the different types of AC and DC motors that you have studied? Okay, you just mentioned all the types of motors. 8 to 10 types of motors are there. You just mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, all the types of motors that you have studied. And out of these, which one type of motor is used for almost 95% of all industrial applications? Out of all these motors, just one type of motor is used for 95% of all industrial applications. Which is that one motor? Okay, you have to just mention that. Which is that motor? Now it is question number 4. You must have studied that motors are run by using starters. Okay, like you have for your automobiles, you have starters. Similarly, motors also need starters. Now my question is, listen carefully. Why do electric motors need starters? Why do electric motors need starters? Why can motors not be run using only a switch fuse, that is main switch, or an MCB without a starter? Okay, it's the same question. Why do you need a starter? Why can't you run the motor without a starter, just by using a main switch or a MCB? That is my 4th question. Short question. Okay, answer it. Now the 5th question. This is also about starters. What type of starter would you use for running a 415 volts, 3-phase, 15 horsepower, 15 horsepower squirrel cage induction motor? What type of starter would you use for running a 415 volts, 3-phase 15 horsepower squirrel cage induction motor. And why did you choose that particular type of starter? Motors can be run using different type of starters, but for this particular motor, what is the starter that you would choose and why did you choose that type of starter? Okay, we will now go to question number 6. Now this is a practical question, so just try to understand it. You must have studied that there are something called an overload relay inside motor starters. All motor starters have got something called an overload relay, and this can be set to trip at a particular current to protect the motor from overload. My next question, part 1, is what overload setting would you keep for a 415 volts 3-phase squirrel cage induction motor which is running on a star delta starter and drawing a full load line current of 22 amps. Okay, what overload setting would you keep for this motor? 415 volts 3-phase squirrel cage induction motor. It is using a star delta starter and drawing a full load line current of 22 amps. Now what overload setting would you keep for this? I have mentioned that the motor is drawing a line current of 22 amps. Okay. Now the part 2 of the question is, how will you measure the line current and phase current of this motor? How will you measure the line current and phase current of this motor? You have to tell me what instrument you will be used for measuring that and how you will connect that instrument for measuring the line current as well as the phase current. Okay, that's the 6th question. Now we'll move on to the 7th question. Now this is the part 1 of this question is purely theory. Okay, what you have studied, it will be there in your notes. Part 1 is theory and part 2 is practical. Okay, now just listen to the question. What are the methods of varying the speed of a squirrel cage induction motor? What are the methods of varying the speed of squirrel cage induction motors? This will be there in your notes. If you don't know, you have to just check your notes. This is the theoretical part of the question. Now part 2 is the practical part. Okay. If your machine is fitted with a squirrel cage induction motor and you are required to run the motor at various speeds, what ready-made equipment would you buy from the market to run the motor at variable speed? Okay. Now your machine is fitted with a squirrel cage induction motor and to run it at variable speed, what equipment would you use? Like a starter, you will go to the market and you tell them that I want so and so thing, so that I want to run this motor at variable speed. You have to tell what is that, what is the equipment. That is what I am asking. This is the 7th question. We will move on to question number 8. Okay. This question is similar to question 7. Only thing here, the motor is a different type. It is not a squirrel cage induction motor. It is a different motor. Okay. Part 1 is theory and part 2 is practical. Same like question number 7. Okay. Now this is part 1. What are the methods of varying a speed of a DC shunt motor? What are the methods of varying the speed of a DC shunt motor? This is theoretical part. Your answer will be there in your books. Okay, now I will go to the part 2, same like question 7. If your machine is fitted with a DC shunt motor and you are required to run the motor at various speeds, what ready-made equipment would you buy from the market to run this motor at variable speed? Okay. This is question number 8. Now we will go to question number 9. This is a very practical question. Majority of the motors in the industry get burned due to this particular fault. Okay, so listen carefully. The question is part 1. If a 3-phase squirrel cage induction motor, while running on load, suddenly slows down and also produces a continuous humming sound, what is the fault? If a 3-phase squirrel cage induction motor, while running on load, suddenly slows down and also produces a continuous humming sound, what could be the fault? This is part 1. And part 2 of the question is, how will you check to verify this fault? Now you have found out that you suspect this zones of fault. Now how will you go to check it to verify whether it is that fault only? That is part 2. And part 3 of the question is, if you continue to run the motor in this condition, what could happen and why? If you continue running the motor with this fault, what could happen and why? Okay, so that is question number 9. Okay, now we are going to the last question, question number 10. This is a general knowledge question about flexible wires and armored cables that are used in industrial wiring. Okay. Usually it is armored cables that are used for industrial wiring. Flexible wires and flexible cables are used only for certain specific purposes like portable machines in the industry. Single core flexible wires are the same as the ones used in house wiring, whereas flexible cables and armored cables are available in multi-core and various sizes in square amount. Now this is my question part 1. What are the standard sizes of flexible wires and flexible cables that are available in the market, starting from the smallest size to the biggest? You have to mention all the standard sizes of the flexible wires and the flexible cables that are available in the market. Okay, like 1.5 mm, 2.5 mm, etc. All the sizes you have to tell me. This is because you need to know. This is a general knowledge question. You should not go to the shop and ask for a cable or wire that is not available, that is not there at all. You will make a fool of yourself. Okay. Now, part 2 of the question is, similarly, what are the standard sizes of armored cables? Okay. What are the standard sizes of armored cables that are available in the market, starting from smallest size up to the largest size? Okay, this is part 2 of the question. And part 3 of the question, this is about current carrying capacity of a conductor. Okay, something to do with the current carrying capacity of a conductor. You must have studied somewhere in your syllabus that the current carrying capacity of a conductor is directly proportional to the cross-sectional area of the conductor. Right? Now I'll ask you the question. In an AC circuit, will a conductor of double the cross-section area carry double the current? In an AC circuit, will a conductor of double the cross-section area carry double the current, and why? Whether your answer is yes or no, you have to tell me why. I think this much should do for the first session. Try to send me the answers by email as soon as you can. Remember, if you don't know some answers, you may refer to your notes or textbooks, but please do not ask other engineers or your lecturers, nor refer to the internet. Depending on the response received, we will conduct the next session and I will discuss some of your answers and also give you the right answers. If you have any doubt or query, you may even contact me. So here I am displaying all the questions and also my email ID for you to note down. See you in the next session. Bye.